Okay, and this is Kerry Smith. I'm with the Gray Edge Group, and this presentation is to kind of laud the accomplishments that have gone on in another state, and maybe we could learn something from it on how we work in New York and stuff. But we've got Chris Duffy on the line, and in a minute, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you, but let me just say real quick, there are a couple of things that we want to talk about as we go through and points we want to hit. One is community involvement. The other is the purpose for the structure, what the structure really is and how it came about, status of the MESA or MESA, MESA, the training, and basically some of the future we have. I think part of the future and training goals are things that are particularly applicable to New York, and the structure may or may not be, depending on how things evolve with your legislature. So I'm going to let Chris start and give us a background of where he came from, what they were thinking about when they started this thing, and also a real quick introduction of yourself, if you don't mind, Chris. And then I thought we'd keep the Rangers in detail at the end, if that's something you wanted to do.
Sure. Well, thank you, Kerry. Thank you, New York GEO. New York GEO is a fantastic enterprise organization / nonprofit that's leading the way. Inspired me 8 years ago to get into the GEO space after I came from OSU training. Very few people really understand that New York GEO is changing the landscape of how heat is being delivered, not just in the state of New York, but across the country. And I, for one, want to thank you for allowing me to be in front of such leadership. I'm a laborer. I work in the field. I haven't done that lately because I've been involved in planning. I've been trying to scale the geothermal experience in underserved markets, primarily municipalities where there's usually not a lot of green bank financing. And because it's a scalable effort, which means I was trying to do more than 50 units at a time, financing is critical for me to be able to apply the successful technology that's being lauded by the New York GEO. So what I did is, I was able to create this effort in a very small part of the city of Bridgeport called the Municipal Energy Savings Area, which was an opportunity to classify and categorize for the zoning department of Bridgeport a district that was carbon-free, secure in its delivery of energy during a storm, which is resiliency. At the same time, provides savings to the homeowners. And after the completion of the project and all those goals were met, the Municipal Energy Savings Area, which is known as MESA of 2019, was recognized by the state legislature unanimously as having achieved its goals. So where I went from there was I decided to talk to this Bridgeport legislative delegation and bring them to the site. It's a lot easier to show people than to talk about it. And the homeowners and the renters were very happy to talk about it. So we decided that we would take this to the next level and try to create a platform so we could do funding in these underserved markets. The truth is that there's never enough money for all the good ideas out there. But when you've done a project and you've shown success and you can't get access to the bank, you have to come up with new alternatives or walk away. So we went back to the city and we talked to the delegation, and they said, why don't we make the Municipal Energy Savings Area something that could create financing? So I changed it to the Municipal Energy Security Authority with the understanding that it wouldn't be a private bank, it wouldn't be my private piggy bank, but it would be an opportunity for the state as well as other stakeholders in the clean energy industry to follow certain standards that could be established as we move along. Those standards, I've talked to Kerry quite a bit. He knows a lot more than me. And I'm constantly learning from him. Standards not only in geothermal, but in terms of efficiencies and in terms of the Department of Energy. And I think those are all very, very important attributes to assign to this new idea of MESA. I think that what's important about the MESA today and what I'm trying to convey is not so much why we need another acronym, but because it's an opportunity to work with people who are sharing the same goals, but maybe aren't getting there as quickly as they have to. So, I talk about people like New York GEO, though I don't speak for you. I could tell you, I'm sure that your goals are a lot like the Union AFL-CIO goals, which is how do we get clean energy in the ground faster and affordably. There are other people like the NAACP who are beginning to understand clean energy is not just political, it's economical. So they've approached me about the MESA and say, can we be a stakeholder in this? Can we participate on a national pilot? I mean, on the national level, once the pilot is demonstrated, so we can get our job campaign, up to part of it. What their job campaign is reentry and formerly incarcerated individuals who are trying to work. There's a lot of people in the Green Bank who aren't leading the Green Bank, but are part of the Green Bank, who think that there's financial platforms that we could take advantage of if there was larger scale. I'm not one to talk about those products, but I know that MESA could benefit from it. And my particular angle for excitement, not angle, but excitement for MESA is that the workforce side, which I think Carrie alluded to. I'm leading up the Rangers, which is an opportunity to create skills for people who want to get into the field of energy, or if not energy, and then basically, put them through a process in which they get these skills, get them certified under a contractor's license, which I have, and DOD approval, which I have, so they could do DOD work, and then basically get them certified in other areas, things like hydrogen, fuel cells, and other services that might even range emergency disaster services that could help the U.S. government basically deploy a civic corps of trained individuals that would be a lot better in infrastructure development than maybe the National Guard, at this point. So, these Rangers are something that I'm tying into the state legislature with MESA, though that wasn't the purpose of MESA. It's attracting money because, as you know, the state is probably much more interested in putting people to work, although, they like the idea of saving, energy savings, and they like reducing carbon, they like critical infrastructure, security hardening, resiliency, all that matters. But what gets people to write money at the legislature is when you start talking about putting people to work. So in the state of Connecticut, it's been suffering because most of the money we've been writing for checks has been white collar work, which is fine if you have a college degree. So here we have an opportunity to take intelligent people who are very good workers to learn a skill, and then basically get the opportunity to get trained, which is what I've been talking to Gray Edge about, and maybe we can talk to New York Geo about, to get them up and running so that they can go back to their communities and work on the infrastructure at the level that we can, so that we can attract the necessary financial resources, if not from the Green Bank, from the state bonding. And then that's sort of what MESA is about. And I'm sure that there's more to it as the weeks become months, and the legislation passes, but that's what it is. So thank you.
Chris, let's go ahead and let you go ahead and describe the structure you set up in Bridgeport and stuff. So just as a quick recap, that one is he's turned around and he's gone and gotten community involvement, both with the politicians and the legislature. And they showed them what they could do. As you might have guessed, or make sure that everybody understands that Chris actually put together a project himself with low to medium income housing and stuff, and that's what he took people out to take a look at to see what the result was, and got quite a bit of local TV coverage and so forth. If I were to turn and liken it to one of the projects that kicked New York Geo off, was Jen's project in Western New York, where he was using multi family systems, not the same type of thought as we're talking about for using in the central, what we're calling now the thermal highway. And by the way, that name copyright on that name has been released so that we could use it in the new code structure that we're developing for the 2024 code for IATMO. And so to do that, they could not use a registered trademark and stuff. We had to release that, and we're happy to do that as the group. But the other part of the recap is the key points was he took some local people in Bridgeport that were politically active and moved through that. And Chris, I'd like you to turn around and talk just a little bit about your team local that is continuing on, and then also the formation of the lab.
Sure, Carrie. I was fortunate that over the course of 7 to 8 years, as this project that we speak about, which is the first project I worked on in the city of Bridgeport, it's Seaview Village. It made the news. It got the state legislature to recognize it. It it was a national, unprecedented. It was a very important project for removing carbon and creating affordability in an underserved area without any public subsidy. Without any public subsidy, I reduced costs by 70% of heating and cooling and hot water, which is just not my technology. It's the technology of folks like New York Geo. But I needed to show the state that this could be done without subsidy, and that, if we could put more workers and we could scale, that this would be a good industry. But to do that, I had to work with the leadership of the community, and a big half of the community speaks Spanish. The other half, is minority. I speak Spanish, so I was able to talk to a lot of people at the churches and what have you, and we were talking about, coming over to the Seaview Village and seeing the project and how their friends and family could also benefit from this, and what it means. From the people I talked to in Washington, it was an opportunity to scale into a city that really was, opening its doors to the idea of working with clean technology. For the community in Bridgeport, it was about how do we get this to benefit not just these 50 homes, but everybody else in the neighborhood. And while we're at it, why don't we put some people to work? So what we did is we were going to create this idea of MESA. I started going down the path of creating organizations, and I'm not in the business of creating organizations, right? I just like to drill a hole. So I just said, why don't we work with existing enterprise like the city of Bridgeport or the Catholic Church, or none of them were interested, as good as they are. Leading nonprofits weren't interested. So, we had some leaders in the Democratic Party who came up to me and said, look, we'd like to create an enterprise and, let's formalize it. And I said, well, okay, let's do that. And we put together Bridgeport Labs as an opportunity to use technology to advancing people's lives. That was the mission statement. It got attention, and we got some very nice patrons who gave us incredible downtown office space and gave us legal services, gave us accounting services, gave us, real support financially. When you do things right, people show up. And then we just basically said, let's have Bridgeport Labs move forward and basically be the platform by which we could create these connections with the State Department of Labor, and the State Department of Office Management and Budget, so that MESA, which is not really organized yet, but just registered, can actually then focus on its job, which is to serve the industry, not necessarily the market, but the industry, right? So that we can start putting the necessary stakeholders into MESA without having to oblige them to subscribe to some 501c3. But we needed a 501c3, and that's what the labs are. And that labs got off the ground pretty easy, which I was a little surprised. And that's because of what Carrie was saying. The people who sit on the board, and I don't sit on the board, are notable leaders of the community, especially in the minority community, who have been there for a generation or two, and they make things happen at the local level and at the state level. So they've been moving this MESA along very, very well, where I couldn't really see that happen as quickly. So Bridgeport Labs is something that has been sort of adopting this in its mission statement as a technology for deployment. Again, to Bridgeport Labs' mission, using technology to advancing people's lives. So MESA kind of fits that, and we'd like to see that succeed. And the legislature is improving its bonding and its support for MESA based on the Bridgeport legislative leadership that's supportive of the labs and what we're doing. And hopefully, we could keep this a very honest and simple approach that's scalable.
Well, under this program and stuff, if I'm not sure on it, take Chris's, and again, I'm going to act kind of as the moderator here in some case and throwing in some things that we've seen.
Hi, I'm
sorry? Oh, I thought a question popped up. Okay, but what Chris? So far, here's what we've done. We've got a demo project. We started to get people involved with it, a little bit of news coverage, a little bit of a community involvement that went through that, and there's obviously some community involvement that moved through that. We've turned around and we tried it out in an area that we're in the low and moderate income and plus business development groups and stuff. So we practically looked at this. So there's a demonstration of the practicality of what we've gone through. But the key piece to this was community involvement actually drove this to the point where we go to the legislature. The legislature next recognizes that we, through some other transformations, MESA as a service, as a security service, And part of that has to do, and where that security comes in, partially is in the guarantee that we may be able to make with these type of systems to the low and moderate income, that their energy stability would be as best it could be, and that there would be some sort of a shared savings under that business model that came along, where there would be a reduction in energy costs to the individual families and the other businesses that were in these neighborhoods and stuff. Obviously, that's what geothermal is all about in terms of its ROI. And look, it needs to be some way we can practically start to look at implementing that. We've got the city council involved with it, and they're blessing the project. There's a number of other projects. There's other neighborhoods that are depressed in Connecticut, just like in Bridgeport, just like you have in the state of New York. And as Chris started to put this together, now we've got a community system and a governance board. And the governance board has the ability and the credibility to turn around and look at and potentially move money from the state legislature or any other source that it has into a fund that would look. Now, the second piece of the business plan is that there has to be something to pay for running the program. And the third piece is we need to turn around and start to put a little bit aside to start to make the system and the program self-fund generating. And at least from the community side, so they can turn around and handle all of the opportunities that they might have. Along with, now he's also engaged at this point in time the local business community that looks at it and says, gee, I might have more work to do. I'm going to support that. What is transferring and we're moving into is the point of what kind of a structure. And I think that the important thing to add to this is it's outside of the PUC structure. The important thing is, I think that New York is stalled. And under the stalling, part of it is because fundamentally they don't know what to do. They haven't figured out how to look at it. They don't know how to analyze the neighborhoods and take a look and see what's really advantageous, because they've been working in a different environment. And that confusion and the lack of security, if you will, to the outcome of this is going to prevent them from turning around and picking places to look at. And I'm going to take the screen for a second here and see if I can make sure that this works. But we have, can you see my screen? And what it should be is a Burkle graph.
Yes, Kerry.
And a picture. You know, this is part of combining the information we're getting from Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, and so forth, and starting to put it on the plate. What we have is the mixed use heating and cooling districts. The picture on the right-hand side, which we can blow up and take a look at, is a community that they developed and an identified spot that we have in a low to medium income housing project. And so that we've got these things. You've seen this picture. I've used it in presentations before, but it's kind of the ideal way to demonstrate to both the authority and to the funding agencies about how this works, because it's real simple to pick out the various pieces that we've got. We've got the residential low income. We've got the commercial, both some big box and also some typical commercial. We've got a skating rink over here. So what we have is an ideal balanced community that is right there in Bridgeport that we might be able to turn around and we start to look at. Now, I'm not going to say this is the first one we will do, but what it means is that we've actually identified the components we need for an integrated system so that we can turn around. Next came the discussion about who's going to operate it. And the initial discussions were that the MESA and possibly Bridgeport Labs or some other entity of similar nature would administer this and operate it at the time. And then at some point in time, it may get profitable. It may or may not get turned over to a utility. And that utility may or may not be an energy utility. Could be the domestic water utility. So if this is structured, or it could be a new thermal utility that we're looking at. So as we go through this stuff and we're starting to put the pieces together so that we lay the background down and stuff. So now we've got some sort of what we can show to individuals and so forth. And we're fitting this area right in here, mixed use high density, which is probably. So we picked a spot that has a very high probability of success. And it's probably very simple. We've enlisted the help of the Bridgeport City Council and the existing rules and laws inside the council that would permit us to turn around and negotiate a fair right away, which is another one of the pieces that has been coming through there. And this is kind of how it's been stepped into. Again, it's in an unregulated environment so that the money can come from the state, and the initial funds that Chris are working on right are about 50 million, right, Chris?
Yes.
That they're looking for an
Yes.
authorization to go through. So that's pretty much, you know, kind of, I'm bringing in our side of it where we were turning around and helping with the development, helping to clarify that. Have you got anything to add to that, Chris?
Yes, I think that the MESA, if we expand our imaginations beyond my, basic thinking, you have some very important people on the panel right now. I see Mr. Olson, Mr. Egg, and Marshall. I see all these names you see. And obviously people have bigger experience with this. I would think that if the MESA was an open process in which you could work with state government to set up these thermal districts, you could allow for local engineers and local contractors and local scientists to participate in these local thermal districts with more ease. If you have something that's more of a public-private partnership platform where you can plug and play. The Green Bank has sort of been that for Connecticut, where, if you can't get the state of Connecticut to pay attention to you, you kind of talk to the Green Bank about your green ideas, and then they listen to you and they invite you to the conference, and that's it. But I think with the MESA, because it's about getting it done, for now anyway, if you had people on the board or, who were really about getting it done, you could have somebody who's a one-woman operation out of Long Island who has an idea for efficiency, and she could plug into the Amityville MESA or to the Bridgeport MESA with a new idea about saving energy, right? And maybe that doesn't work for New Jersey, or maybe it doesn't work for other places, but she doesn't have to go through the political climb that the state requires you to, or the utility climb that I've been going through. And I'm hoping that the MESA is something that standardizes excellence so that people say, well, you should get out of their way. They're getting it done. And, maybe, this MESA allows for local contractors to be able to show up and not necessarily have to sign agreements with each homeowner, but with the MESA. And the MESA actually goes in there and says, you're it. Let's work with you. Give me a 3-year service agreement, and we're going to work with you. And I think that would make things a lot quicker for the market to accept if they knew there was something that was a standard bearer that was able to work with the community with legitimacy and then with the market. There are a lot of people I know who are single business owners who have great ideas. I can't, they can't plug and play with the bank. They're not big enough, or they're not, but that doesn't mean they're not relevant. And I would think that some of the best ideas come from people like that. So it's not that we're replacing the government or replacing the marketplace and its brute forces, but hopefully MESA could be nurturing to these type of things and be a little bit more receptive, which I thought the Green Bank was going to do that. Nothing wrong with the Green Bank, but they're really a finance cabal. And it's very hard to work with that. And I'd like to think more engineers and more scientists would occupy the space of MESA so that we can actually bring workers and other people with good ideas to fruition.
Chris, respecting New York Geo's time and the half hour they allotted this before we have a question, okay, Billy? There are 2 other pieces of this we need to mention. One is the status. Chris has already given you the status of where we are. We're waiting for the legislature to authorize funds. We've got the 501c set up that could administer those funds. In the meantime, we've also started to design a training program. The program is something that we go into that, again, it's how much time we have here. But the point being, we talked about early in the New York experience, how do we develop the infrastructure? What we have been in the middle of doing right now has been talking with both the regular workforce, if you will, and the union workforce. There's opening discussions on union training. There are things that they've already developed that fit into this very nicely as a nice piece of the puzzle. I like plug and play. How many times have you heard us say that? And stuff. So we can plug and play labor too. In the worst case is the union people stay in the union environment and we add geothermal training to the union. The best case is that we combine union training, particularly in the stuff like OSHA awareness, job site awareness, job site training, fusion training, other things that we go along with the geo, and part of it is an independent structure. The allowance is in the funding status right now gives us the flexibility, if it comes through, to maybe pick 20 million for product and people development. And Chris might take, maybe if Bill will give us another 5 minutes, a little bit more to talk about the Rangers. But the last piece is then taking it national. If we can build these agreements with the labor, we can build it with the, the union and non-union forces. We look at a prevailing wage. In the particular case of the state of Connecticut, we believe that the wage for the training is actually going to be paid to the worker while they go to their training. And he's given up. So, Chris, you want to take a little break here? We'll take a couple of questions. And then maybe if the people want to talk about it, we go back into the Rangers, a little bit more of your definition there.
Sure.
Is that okay, Bill?
I think that's a good idea. I think there are some questions brewing, and I'd like to hear more about what the Rangers are, but I think it's important that people maybe get some of their concrete questions answered so that they can contextualize this.
All right, Lisa has a question that came in before Billy raised your hand. And you already made her day already anyway. So where did the political will to create MESA emanate from? What do you think is the key replicable factors that had to come together?
It's a good question for me because it answers how I started this, is that I didn't have credibility. And, if you're not somebody with reputation, it's hard to get people to follow new ideas. So when this project got done down in Seaview Village, I could easily have made it Bridgeport's success, but I couldn't get that across the state. Most people don't care, what Bridgeport's success is, especially if you're from Greenwich or you're from Trumbull. So I said, let's call it something that, could easily be recognized by the legislature. With the project in hand and the success of it being clear, I just tagged it with a name so that I didn't have to say this is Duffy's project, or this is a geo project, or this is a thermal district project, or this is, this is Seaview. I called it MESA because I thought that once I can get that recognized by the state legislature, I could box that and take it across to different levels of government and say, look, here's the resolution from the state, which I have. It's recognizing its ability. Can we not get your support? If I had done that with my own resume or with just Seaview Village, I don't think I'd have opened the doors that I have because of MESA. That's where it came from. It came from the idea of trying to create a branding that would identify with the state and the feds so that I could go beyond my own personal identity.
Okay, and what replicable factor do you think that we could turn around and transit that why do we think this can go national?
Well, we know geo is scalable, it's a question of standards, right? So, with the right people, the right scientists and the right contractors, I think that, the plug and play that you talk about is missing. And I think that, we try to go to the marketplace and get them to catch on to the genius of the clean energy of geo. And that happens, by the way, they talk to the right person and it all makes sense. And other people, you think it should make sense, it doesn't. I think if MESA does have a role, it's to help scale this technology, which is all, it is a scalable technology, to go national and say to people, well, look, why do I borrow from the Green Bank? Well, because most people know what the Green Bank is. I don't know where they live. I don't know who runs it. I don't know where it's located, but I trust it. I'll fill out an application with the Green Bank. I'm hoping that's kind of happening with the MESA. So when you go out and you say to the town selectmen or the city mayor, look, this is MESA. It's recognized by your state. This is something which, you're not going to, you don't have to take that fear. You can take that fear off the table. It's been, it's to your point, Carrie, it's a standard that's been passed by legislation. People can trust it. And I think once you get through that trust factor, things happen, I think.
There you go. Billy, you had your hand up.
Yes. Bringing this back to like brass tacks, it looks like you're working within a community of housing that already exists. That's the first question. Is that so?
So if you're asking if it can do new construction or retrofits, Billy, yeah, it could do by either one.
Yeah, because our concern, especially in New York, about retrofits is that a lot of times, especially low-income housing, is not up to code, and they would need more electric service. They might not have a well-insulated home. So it seems like there are a lot of things in talking to my friends in Massachusetts that they've come up against when they're trying to retrofit this into existing homes that, again, low-income housing is usually the worst, the leakiest, the poorest electrical systems. So how would you deal with that?
would you like me to, I can answer that. Should I answer that? So I would answer that by saying MESA doesn't have to restrict itself to thermal technology. It's an opportunity to see people with challenges. MESA could sit down with people like yourself. You could lead the effort and say, listen, we need to improve the efficiencies of these units. It's a lot better when MESA stands with you, Billy, than going to the New York State, NYSERDA and saying, I have an idea on how to improve low-income housing. I think if you go to MESA, if that's what MESA can do, and create these ideas of how to deal with real acute challenges that are not being dealt with by the government or by the market, then you could say, I think I have a way to address this. It doesn't have to just be a geothermal district solution. I mean, you might find other ideas, right? I mean, I have a woman calling me. She's saying, can I use in the MESA the gray water technology? I have no idea what that is. And I imagine she knows a lot more than me. So I would not say no to that. I would say, let me take it to the people involved with MESA that could get that done, because we have access to 1,000 homes. Why wouldn't we do something like that if it's beneficial? So we don't have to just say geo. We can bring other ideas.
I'm going to add one piece to your package that's replicable. As it's structured right now, we can take money from any credible source. And that goes with union pension funds, that has to do with private investment capital, PPA capital, state capital, city capital. It doesn't make any difference. So what we've done is we've released the shackles from the financing side in this kind of a structure. So it has something. And the state, through the legislature and stuff, has being kind of complicit and getting Chris what he needed to do to start the MESA, has basically said, okay, let's open this door to different structures for energy development. And I think that that's really some of the most important things with that pieces that we can bring to the table right now for all states. And Bill had a hand up.
Yeah, thanks. This is a pretty exciting discussion. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. Forgive my density. What I heard, I think, is that Chris was active on a project that reduced folks' bills by 70% and that had them enthusiastic about the technology. And what I'm thinking is that the MESA is a concept that stemmed off of that project and is looking to kind of replicate it and take it to another level. Is that true? Is there a physical project that has already happened that?
Well, Carrie's working on that. Carrie's working on that. And I think what it is, Bill, is that we're hoping that it's a scalable, opportunity. I've kind of been leaning towards the idea of a public-private partnership as MESA it should be, not a nonprofit. Something that actually allows for us to work with the private industry as well as the public, state and city governments as a standard provider of standards. We don't want to see one contractor or one entity controlling it. We just want to make sure that the standards are in place so that when we go to the villages or the communities that that want to trust us but can't trust us, and say, how do we know this works? Well, because it's coming from the green bank. But since we're not the green bank, we got to create our own identity. And that's what I'm trying to establish in Connecticut. And it's worked pretty good. So far, it's been very good, actually.
Bill,
So
to answer
if I
the first
could,
part of
Carrie,
your question.
for a second,
Just
in terms of the way the technology is working here, I see people are moving into the chat. And I think in my recording, what I get is what's on my screen. So I'm trying not to pay attention to the chat and keep the screen centered on who's talking. And so what other people have been doing is raising their hands. So maybe if you could raise your hand and Carrie can see you, that would be a better way to work it.
Yeah. What I will tell you, and while we're doing it, Bill, is you asked the question, did he have a project to start with? The answer was yes, he did. And that's where he actually named it MESA too, that his project was a municipal
Seaview Village, yes.
energy
Savings area.
Savings area. And that was a multifamily housing development and a low to moderate income.
Very low, yeah, lowest income tract in the country.
Okay, so in a tract that was very successful and stuff, and actually put serious dollars in these people's pocket. I mean, they were happy and kind of almost dancing around when I saw the commercial, but I don't know how they paid them to do that, but that's, whatever. But the long and short of that is, yes, there was a project to start with, and that's why I referenced Jen's project, because it's very similar to that, except that it was in an ultra low income area where there was a lot of attention. Right now in Bridgeport itself is an oppressed labor area. And so it was where the project was, not necessarily what it was, and how it was handled, and the outcome from that project led them to have confidence enough at the state and political levels to turn around and start to ask Chris more questions. It enabled him to bring in more experts. And the teaming that's going on, just like we're today, is a teaming arrangement, as far as I'm concerned. How do we work this thing out? How do we work it together? So other questions? John?
Hey there. Same as everyone else. Thanks for sharing this stuff. Lisa put in there, can you share the organizing documents or reports prepared when working to get this passed? Because I am in the chat. So she wants more info. My questions were sort of around who is threatened by what you're doing, and what kind of resistance are you either getting, or do you anticipate that you're going to get in trying to do this? Because you're doing something new and different, and new and different usually displaces somebody. What's sort of the biggest challenge, and or who's rooting against you out there?
Can I answer that?
I
So
hope.
last session, the utilities stopped the bill. Last session. And that's why 2020 didn't produce MESA. 2019 got MESA passed as a resolution, recognizing the benefits of the geo and the thermal district to the low-income neighborhoods, recognizing MESA as a value to the state of Connecticut. It was a very good resolution, unanimous by Republicans and Democrats. And then we went to 2020 looking for workforce development for the neighborhoods, which is one area that you need to get subsidized. You know, I can't pay for workforce development. And then we need workers. They killed it. You know, they're going to say they didn't, but they did.
And
So
how did they do that?
They just stopped the vote. Very powerful. And then we brought it back to the Black Puerto Rican Caucus, which is a very powerful group. Went to the unions, they didn't support it really. And then I went to the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, and they were like, absolutely, and they're very powerful. And they got behind it, and you know, it wasn't a Black Puerto Rican thing. It was just, yeah, why aren't we doing this? Let's do it. And then that's so what it is for me. Unfortunately, John, I can't do this without strong people, at least people stronger than me. How it works in government.
Just looking at the chat, Billy was on stack next, and I know Ron raised his hand a second ago, I noticed. So why don't we go Billy and then Ron?
My question is, I think might be a good idea to have a municipality own this thermal highway, the whole loop system and everything to do with it. How have you looked at how that could happen, and how would we finance and everything to do with that? Because it seems like that's a really powerful way of the municipality owning this rather than a utility.
So real quick, I did approach the city about this, and they weren't interested because they thought it was a liability. Doesn't really matter why. Just didn't interested. Makes a lot of sense. It would fit very nicely, right? You just go to a place like Poughkeepsie, and there you are, right? You talk to them and say, this is working in Bridgeport, and there it is. Work with local contractors, it's all good. But, after we started doing this, I started talking to some people in the field, and they were saying, former mayors and things who were very nice. And they said, don't bring it to the general fund. You'll be bringing this to the general fund. Any money you save for these people will be consumed by the general fund. And I said, what is a general fund? I don't know, what are you talking? He said, well, it's the thing that keeps getting bigger and bigger every year. And, you bring money and savings on the people like this. It's a huge success, like Seaview Village. They'll be taking that money and put it into the general fund. And I was like, okay, well, what do you recommend? Because I recommend you work like a water pollution control authority or something that's independent but associated with the city. And every city should have one. This is beyond my pay grade. So I said, well, look, one thing I do know is I could focus on the workforce. and getting the legislation through. At some point, the governor has expressed an interest to sit with us. He hasn't done it. I imagine he's going to, with the right people at the right leadership level, and he's probably going to have a question like, where does this really belong in the scheme of things? And you ask great questions, Billy. You asked the right questions. You know, I don't know. I mean, I would think the town. You know, I've got some really big pushback from former political officials who really love this energy work, and they're saying don't put it into the city, because you should partner with the city maybe, but don't put it into the city because you'll lose the money. And that came from some very small towns and big cities, some very big people. So I don't know what that's about, but that's the answer I have.
Okay. To John, what is stack? I'm either...
Stack means the next person in the stack.
Yeah, that's a military term for you're up.
And I think Ron is on
back.
stack. Ron is on stack next, and then Lisa Marshall.
Okay.
Ron, it's all you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for the step in the stack.
when you're in the airborne and you're in stack, it means you better have your shoes back.
Well, and you wait till this next deal is you're going to call it the Rangers, and then you're going to start asking some questions.
Yeah, we all get parachutes.
All right, so
Chris is radically underplaying his influence on this thing, but I'll tell you, he really is a brain at this.
I'm trying. I mean, you know. I'm trying. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're doing great, Chris.
And look at the color of his hair.
Yeah, what's that all about, right? That's called age. I used to look like Bill. Now look at me. Bill Nowak. I used to be respected.
Well, you're very respected here. So a question I guess I have is on the utility territories, right? So basically what you're doing is you're setting up an independent, at least a thermal utility, if not on the electric side as well. So I'm just wondering how you're dealing with the utility, what the utility legislation allows, doesn't allow, and is that one place where they're trying to kill it, or what, with this district, how does that deal with, the utility stuff?
If that's one question, I'll answer any other question. Is that the only thing I know is that if we don't cross the road, we're okay. So the city blocks that we have are 30 homes a block. But if we don't cross the city block, we're okay. We don't have to ask permission. The way so once we cross the city block, we put a thermal loop. We have to deal with the DPUC, which is our agency that deals and regulates with underground lines, public utility lines. We have to ask permission from the DPUC as well as the utility. So we haven't crossed that bridge. So Carrie's been advising us, just create vertical bores with a horizontal loop around the blocks, and then when we have the time to connect, we'll take it to the governor. You know, maybe there'll be a geo exception or something they can give us. Right now, we don't have to deal with the utilities as long as we stay in our box.
So basically, it's a block in Connecticut as opposed to in New York State. I believe it's property lines as opposed to a block. And
they're big blocks. They're very big blocks.
What he's talking about is actually crossing utilities right away. And
yeah,
so that's where they have already been granted that space. And if we were to cross it in let's say just even at a 90 degree angle, and so we'd have to have an easement from them because there's a point in time they may have to repair their own lines. And that's what he was talking about. Well, one of the things we're investigating is actually going deep and doing horizontal if we have to pop up on the other side to link them. So that's part of what we've been tasked to help them with, to work out some of these programs, because we ask the questions, they find out the legal answers. So same thing that New York, by the way, it's a very similar thing what New York Geo is doing right now, or not New York Geo, but NYSERDA is doing with the PACE Institute. They're trying to go through this stuff and say, where are hangups? What pieces do we specifically have to address? It turned out that in Connecticut, they were able to go to the legislature, kind of get this thing up in the MESA format, and it happened to figure out, and it appears and has some appearance of actually being a municipally driven operation, and that tends to help go. We actually have these service districts out here. We call them special service districts. Almost every state in the West has that. And it has to do with how you get the population to get together to get a free board of directors and then manage it, but you manage a new water project or a new well project, rural installation of LNG, some of the things that were going on. So this is we're kind of lumping this together as a community development and job force program. And in doing so, we're going to be selling something, you know, and it's probably not going to be a BTU, it's probably going to be a gallon. So, you know, so we're more akin to a water authority at this point in time than we're a gas authority.
Okay, thanks.
So it's technicality. We just have to work through it.
I don't see anything else in the chat, just by the way. And also, Lisa wanted to tell you, Bill, that it's in presenter view from a recording standpoint. So whatever you're seeing is not what is being recorded exactly.
Yeah, you can navigate all around, and the recording's just going to show presenter view, so don't worry about that. If speaker view rather. So I am just so fascinated by this, and you know, as you're talking, Christy, I'm Googling, looking for news stories, press releases, case study, write-ups. There's nothing I can find. Google wants to tell me how to get from Mesa, Arizona to Bridgeport.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, it's just funny. Brooklyn picked, you know, went national, and Brooklyn picked it up. They called us, and Brooklyn ran it, and there's a link. We used to have it on Connecticut 12, and they took down the links. But yeah, you know, I'm sure, you know, we could post the link up for the news. Brooklyn, New York City, Brooklyn News picked it up, and they keep it up online for the last 2 years. They've kept it online. Why it didn't get a New York Times coverage, why it didn't get like big coverage, I don't know. You know, I don't know, honestly.
well, what it sounds like is you don't really have a publicist, right?
Well, what happened is that, you know, we don't have a publicist, to be clear, but more important, I think the problem is a lot of people don't really get it. You know, the people who get it are the ones who pay their bills, but most people don't get it. Even the state of Connecticut, after they passed it. I remember being at the committee, Lisa, if I could call it Lisa, it's fine. Lisa, when I was up at the committee testifying, they didn't understand what I was talking about Mesa and why this was before the committees of the energy. And I kind of just said, look, it's because people don't know what energy savings looks like and sounds. Everybody says green this, green that, and we don't trust it anymore. We just don't trust it. And I don't trust green this, green that anymore. And you know you don't, so we're trying to create a new standard. And he said, well, that's why we have the Green Bank. And I applaud the Green Bank, but that's not enough for the industry.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, there are people that I talk to who teach me standards. I mean, I don't know the standards, but like Carrie teaches me the standards, you know, Oklahoma State teaches me the standards. But, you know, who in Connecticut talks to Oklahoma? You know, so
well,
I'm very fortunate.
It just sounds like to me that, that, you know, there's a lot of people that we work with that spend a lot of time trying to take the ideas that people like you have and put them into common language that is interesting and accessible to people, that so we can build grassroots support around this kind of stuff. You know, I don't know, hopefully I'm not saying something that you already know, but you know, in the work that I've done the past few years, what I've realized is that the press almost never covers anything unless it's hand-fed to them by somebody who's already skilled at feeding things to the press and that the press already has a relationship with. That's how it happens. The press doesn't just go and say, oh, what's an interesting story and we're going to cover this. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think what you're doing is amazing. I want to understand it better. I want to talk about it. I want to put you in front of important decision makers in New York or your case study. I want to make this happen, and I want to be able to intelligently, you know, champion this approach, which is just so exciting and promising and has so many good angles. And then the press will eat it all up, you know, but it has to be put into the press is overtaxed and incredibly lazy now. So they're not lazy because they're bad people. They're just, they get so much coming at them. So what they publish is they hear from somebody that they already have a relationship with, a prepackaged, ready to go thing of information, and then they might take an interest. So that's what I want to get involved and I think, and I want to talk about and learn about this a lot more.
And you know, what I'm talking about, Lisa, is, thank you for all that, by the way, is nothing short of, you know, I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. You know, I've been to conferences. I mean, I was young at one time. I'm 53 now. I was young. I've been doing this for 10 years. I saw guys like Gary Olson. I see him all over the country. And I'm like, wow, man, talk about keeping up. And I'm sure there's other Olsons out there, and they're changing the world, right? So while I'm digging a hole, there are people out there pushing the envelope all the time, and making it easier for guys like me to go to my local legislator, who maybe 1 out of 20 of them says, you know, I think I know what you're talking about. I saw this guy called Olson talking about. And we wish there was 1,000 Olsons, but there aren't. There's only 100. And in the meantime, you're right, publicity would make a big deal. But you know what really, really, really gets the word out is when you start telling people that, you know, I'm saving 70% of my energy costs and you're not. And it's coming from your friend or your neighbor, not some marketing agent. you know how many people get calls from sun panels or something. They tell you, you could save money, and you want to believe, but you don't know if you should. But if you're a cousin or your brother's doing it, you trust them. And I hope that this MESA will become something that people can take a personal ownership of it and control it in their local neighborhoods. And then basically, be a standard that carries and visions, because I don't know standards. I really don't, but I respect them. Because I know how the military works. Standards matter. It controls people's trust and level of trust. And right now, I'm very disappointed in my local green bank. I've read their mission statement. I do read, and I'm very disappointed in it. And not that it matters whether I'm disappointed or not. They don't care. I just think that the standards aren't there for what we're doing. And I'm hoping that with folks like Harry, I have the privilege of meeting people like the New York Geo, which I know is very privileged. And if I can have that 1 hour to talk, and that's all I ever get, at least the idea sticks and we can be better for it. I don't know. I just put some links up if it helps.
Chris, thanks so much for sharing those links and for this presentation. If somebody could get a shot of the chat, I'd appreciate that. If somebody knows how to do that so that we've got all these links and we've got this information. And Chris or Carrie, did either of you have anything you wanted to say to close up here?
I want to say thank you for giving Chris the forum to do this and stuff. He gives me way too much credit and stuff. And I have a team behind me that is just, I think, able to do a good job. And I just enjoy working with them. So, and
well, you're both amazing.
Here
I mean, come on.
Yeah, and we got John, we got Billy, and a couple of others here that are really. You guys have all stuck your hands in the mill and stuff, and had part of your fingers nipped off and everything else. So, but this is the kind of thing we got to start putting this stuff together. The whole purpose of our group is to start unifying the industry if we can, bringing all the technology, all of the people, all of the personnel, and get us all moving in a direction. So, but Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to turn off the recording.